Radovan Karadzic, the man who was the infamous leader of the Bosnian Serbs during the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. The man who famously warned Bosnia's Muslims that they could be annihilated if they declared independence. The man whose army and orders tried to make that threat a reality over the next 3 years. Two cities bear particular testimony to his brutality: Sarajevo and Srebrenica. At Srebrenica, Karadzic, along with General Mladic, are charged with killing 8,000 men and boys following the fall of the UN's first safe haven. Evidence will be presented at his trial that the killings included well-planned executions, lies, and the bombing of fleeing civilians. Men aged up to 77 down to boys as young as 12 were killed. At Srebrenica, the massacre was carried out over a few days. In Sarajevo, it took place over nearly 4 years. Under siege, the city was pounded with artillery, mortars and sniper fire.
These people have food, no milk for children, no chocolate, no nothing.
Of the more than 12,000 people in the city who died in the random killing, over 1,000 were children. Despite being encircled by Serb forces, having little or no power, and under constant attack, Sarajevo never fell. In this edition of NATO Review, we go back to Sarajevo, the scene of one of the Bosnian War's worst war crimes, to see how those who suffered and those who tried to catch Karadzic reacted to his capture. And we look at what this means for the future and the security of the country and the region. Since surviving the war, Nijara Ahmetašević has been dedicated to investigative journalism, including tracking down Radovan Karadzic.
I was here during the war in Sarajevo. I survived the war, and many of my friends were killed, many of my friends were wounded. I was wounded, many of my family members were badly wounded or killed during the war.
What was her reaction when she heard of Karadzic's arrest?
When Karadzic was arrested, I felt like that's the end of the war, but it's not, unfortunately.
Rafi Grigorian is the Deputy High Representative for Bosnia-Herzegovina. Prior to this, he worked for both NATO and the US government, specialising in the Balkans. He has been described as one of the most dedicated pursuers of Karadzic. How did he feel when he heard the news of Karadzic's arrest?
I felt kind of like when I finished my PhD, although this took a little bit longer. What I expected to be a feeling of relief and elation turned out to be just numbness.
Mention the word Sarajevo to many people in the West and it will conjure up images of a wartime city under siege. But this is a city that wants to move on. This week, for example, is celebrating the Sarajevo Film Festival with visitors from all around the world. So how much does the arrest of Karadzic mean to people in Sarajevo today?
To je zločinac najveći, veći od Hitlera.
Bio sam prije svega jako iznenađen jer sam smatrao da taj lik nikada neće biti uhapšen. Druga reakcija je bila ta da sam shvatio da ipak možda malo postoji pravde na ovome svijetu.
Karadzic is already in The Hague, where he awaits trial by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia.
You're charged with genocide, punishable under Articles 4.3a, 7.1 and 7.3 of the Statute of the Tribunal.
Sir Geoffrey Nice was the lead prosecutor in the trial in The Hague of Slobodan Milosevic.
I'm suggesting to the accused through the witness, or to the witness, I don't know who it is, that the total of 93 prisoners is a false and indeed an intentionally false figure.
Does Geoffrey Nice think that if Karadzic's crimes were committed in the region, then his trial should be in the region?
In an ideal world, I would have thought this would have been the ideal place for him to be tried, but maybe it's too early for that to happen. It would have been very good to have had the man tried in the place where the crimes are said to have been committed. For the witnesses to be able to come on a day basis and not to be taken in the alien environment of The Hague.
The tribunal was set up in the first place because the powers in the region were manifestly not doing what they were legally obliged to do. This tribunal was set up in large part to deal with Karadzic and Mladic. And I think if there's to be any sense of assuredness that justice is impartial here, notwithstanding my own personal views on the matter, that the only place you can really expect that at this time would be in The Hague with these international tribunal for these two figures.
One difficulty thrown up by trying Karadzic in The Hague is that many Serbs and Bosnian Serbs still distrust the Hague Tribunal. We went to Pale, Karadzic's base during and after the war, to gauge how people there saw his arrest and forthcoming trial. And already it's very clear that we're in Serbian territory. This is Republika Srpska. The signs are often in the Cyrillic alphabet. There are flags, Serbian flags, hanging from several buildings. And one of the first buildings that we saw here in Radovan Karadzic's adopted town has a very appropriate name. This is the centre of Pale, Karadzic's adopted hometown. Karadzic was arrested in 2008, almost exactly 13 years after he had been indicted by the Hague War Crimes Tribunal. That indictment charged him with genocide, persecutions and killing non-Serbs in attacks on towns throughout Bosnia-Herzegovina. He's also charged with rounding up thousands of non-Serbs into camps where it's alleged that his command killed, tortured, mistreated and sexually assaulted non-Serbs in those camps. Yet for a year after that indictment, in July 1995, he was seen walking and living freely in the centre of this town. Initially, many responses were guarded.
Svi trebaju da odgovaraju bez obzira na naciju, na sve, da odgovaraju za zločin.
But soon we heard some people voicing the loyalty that Karadzic had enjoyed when he lived in the town. Can you tell me if you were happy when you heard that Radovan Karadzic had been arrested?
Loše, to skroz loše. Baš mi nije drago. Baš mi to nije drago.
I'm not happy whatsoever that he has been arrested.
Neka znaju cijeli svijet.
For some, Karadzic's capture is still too sensitive a subject.
Na to pitanje nisam spreman da dam.
Bosnian Serbs' skepticism about the Hague Tribunal doesn't just come from their belief that Slobodan Milosevic did not receive a fair trial. They also point to the Hague's acquittal of Muslims charged with war crimes, such as that of Muslim wartime commander Nasser Oric.
Mr. Oric, would you please stand up? You are found not guilty and therefore acquitted of, under count 1, failure to discharge your duty as a superior, to take necessary and reasonable measures to prevent the occurrence of murder.
Sad narod treba da strahuje od jednoga bandita. On je pobio dole Srbe.
Ko?
Srbi su kako mi ime?
Nasser Oric?
Ja, lično.
But this belief overlooks the fact that Oric was actually found guilty on some charges.
You are, however, found guilty of, under count 1, failure to discharge your duty as a superior, to take necessary and reasonable measures to prevent the occurrence of murder.
Is this Serbian skepticism about the Hague justified?
We now have 159 out of 161 indictees have gone to The Hague or been processed in some way through the tribunal proceedings. And there have been some very important judgments in those cases, as well as people being cleared of charges as well. So I think it has been fair, but for political reasons, people want to portray the court as either being pro this or anti that. The court proceeds on the basis of facts presented before it.
Bruce McLean, who succeeded Raffi Grigorian as political advisor at NATO HQ in Sarajevo, agrees.
One of the problems that we have had in this country with people's attitudes about the whole process is that there are many people who feel that the ICTY is biased and that they're, especially on the Serb side, that the international community is holding the Serb population as a whole accountable for the atrocities that occurred during the war. And these kinds of trials, I think, serve the opposite effect. They show that those individuals who are really guilty of the crimes that were committed are held accountable for those crimes.
Does Jeffrey Nice feel that The Hague can guarantee Karadzic a fair trial?
It's up to the judges, and there's no reason why not. The judges will have to be firm in ensuring that they get whatever evidence they need at the request of the parties. But of course they can give this man a fair trial. That's what judges are there to do. And although I don't know the Karadzic evidence in detail, some of the evidence is much, at least at first sight, stronger than the evidence against Milosevic. Some of the things he said at the assembly sessions may be cripplingly difficult for him to deal with, I don't know. So again, there may be other reasons why the trial can be more compact than the Milosevic trial.
One of the aspects that worries analysts about the political structure of Bosnia-Herzegovina is the number of elections that it's had, particularly since 1996, many more than many other countries, particularly in Western Europe. The other worrying factor that they point to is that people are increasingly voting along ethnic lines rather than with a national interest. And they wonder where this is heading. Is there a danger that Karadzic's trial could play a role in Bosnia-Herzegovina's elections in 2008?
It's my supposition that it will not cause significant problems. Although you can be certain that in the run-up to the municipal elections in October that this and other issues will be used, that those that wish to exploit them for the wrong reasons.
According to Rafi Grigorian, this issue shouldn't even be on the election radar.
It's odd because these are municipal elections. They have nothing to do with issues about entity status or state status. But in reality, municipal elections should be about whether or not the garbage is being collected and the streets are being paved. So you can see consistently in this country, unfortunately, all over the place, that politicians will divert people's attentions from the real problems of governance and deal with issues like the Karadzic family and who's the bigger supporter of them for municipal elections, which is ridiculous.
The capture of Radovan Karadzic has implications across the Balkans region. What are the implications in particular for Serbia, the country which arrested him?
I think it's a very positive sign for Serbia. As I think we had discussed before, what was going on in Serbia was a struggle for its democratic soul, and the pro-democracy forces have won. The arrest of Radovan Karadzic, and I would hope Ratko Mladic, are requirements of domestic law in Serbia, not to mention international legal obligations under the United Nations.
What I think, and what is maybe possibility, is that this was a good political moment, not only for Serbia, but probably the best one for Serbia, but probably even for the whole international community, European Union and America, because they are the countries that are involved the most in everything that's going on in the Balkans.
The forthcoming trial also gives the Hague Tribunal the opportunity to show that it remains the best and most objective format for trying war criminals. But will Karadzic's trial be more successful than Milosevic's?
There's no reason for it to be a particularly long trial, because Milosevic's case was 3 wars, a 10-year period, and it would have been concluded in 2 years, but for his ill health.
For Rafi Grigorian, the key focus must be Karadzic's crimes.
Enough people have filled column inches of discussion about supposed deals and completely ignored the crimes that the man is accused of doing and for which he was already found guilty in United States courts of having run rape camps.
Is the trial of Karadzic enough for the region to move on?
No, we have to see Mladic in Hague. Without him, it's not the end. It's just not the end. Because I mean, it's horrible to live in the world when you are aware that somebody like Ratko Mladic is walking freely around you. It's not only horrible if you're Bosnian, it's horrible if you're a human being.
I don't think it's over until we get Mladic. I mean, Karadzic was the political leader. He's the one that set the policies. Mladic executed the military aspects of this. The two figures are quite distinctly different personalities. One looks like a sort of pathological killer. The other one looks like the pseudo-intellectual. He is very soft-spoken demeanor, but as I mentioned before, a pathological liar. But Mladic, through his own public statements, made clear he knew exactly what he was doing. Exactly what he was doing.
Many people who suffered in Sarajevo have a stoic outlook on Karadzic's arrest. This is a step forward in closing the past. But the past remains still painfully vivid. There are many numbers that are mentioned in relation to the war here in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Sarajevo with its 43 months of siege, Srebrenica with its 8,000 men and boys who were killed there. But the numbers that you'll find here in this Sarajevo graveyard are largely 92, 93, 94 and 95. Those are the years of death marked on most of these graves, civilians and soldiers who died here during the years of war. These graveyards are not tucked away in quiet places. Many of them are in the heart of the city because many of them used to be Sarajevo city parks. So while Karadic's arrest can bring some closure, it is far from the final chapter in this story.
Ja sam duševno ispunjen kad sam čuo za hapšenje to. A što se tiče svakodnevnice, morate opet raditi, morate sve, neće samo ništa doći. A politički ja mislim da će biti puno bolje.
For us, the war is not still history. We are still living we are still living in a kind of, not war, but post-war country. And I'm not sure, even though like day when Karadzic was arrested, I felt like that's the end of the war. But it's not, unfortunately. We still live with that. And we will probably have to live with that for many more years in front of us.